Sandrock Multiplayer's been in the works for a while now, and currently an open beta is available to everyone who owns the base game. It's going to be live only until the 20th of January, so if you want to give it a try and you haven't gotten around to it yet, now is the time. Of course, it's nowhere near finished, so everything is subject to change. It does provide a fair amount of gameplay though. Hi, it's Reeve, and today we're taking a look at the town of Sandrock before it became a total wasteland. Because that's the general idea in the multiplayer. We play the role of a builder sometime during the relic rush, so there are more trees and more water in the oasis. The town of Sandrock is already there, just not all of it, and during the course of our gameplay, our main goal is to make it look more like Sandrock we know. Let that sink in. Anyway. We clear the rubble to open passageways, construct the missing buildings like Cooper's barn, and build essential elements like the train tracks. We are also able to meet the characters that are no longer in Sandrock in a single-player campaign like Trudy's husband, or Mayor Lou, Howlett, or even the legendary Martel. But we also quickly discovered that the timeline is all mixed up. Some characters look younger like Mort, Jan, or Mason, some don't like Owen or Justice, or Elsie, who probably should be a small child or not even be born yet. So what's up with that, you ask? Well, the whole thing is not just a retelling of Sandrock's history. Actually, it's a sort of VR experience made by Chi. So the story doesn't take place in a specific time, but rather in several parts of the past at once, before the single-player campaign. And it is, by design, a game in a game, in a way, but it's just a cosmetic explanation and has no impact on gameplay. All in all, this whole thing is actually quite a clever way to make us even more attached to Sandrock, because now, whenever I look at some of the structures around town, I think, hey, I built this. But I'm prone to nostalgia like that. So, what about the gameplay itself? Well, after creating a new character, you have two choices. You can either enter a public town that you will share with random people, but you'll get your own workshop and technically you can play completely on your own. At least that's how it was during the first test, back when private towns weren't a thing yet. The second option is creating a private town and inviting up to 3 friends, and I admit this time I only tried the second option. You get a shared workshop with 4 beds, a single shared chest, a work table and an assembly station, and you get to work. And there's a lot of it. If you cooperate, it should go rather fast, at least at first. You don't live in Sandrock proper, but nearby in an area called Builder Plaza that doesn't exist in the single-player mode, and your goal is to improve both this place and Sandrock itself. There is no shortage of big projects and small private commissions. You can also upgrade the Commerce Guild. You earn points and special currency that you need to do so, and you earn them, of course, by working, building, and completing commissions. Saying it's a never-ending marathon of gathering and crafting wouldn't be too far off, but this is what this game is all about. However, as long as you cooperate with your teammates, it shouldn't be particularly bothersome, at least, like I already said at first. I heard that bringing the guild up to level 20 is grindy, but I wouldn't know, my guild is at around level 10. The good thing is you have very clear goals. You don't just grind mindlessly hoping it will come in handy at some point. You know exactly what you're doing and why, which makes it actually quite pleasant. The game seems to be aware that baby steps and frequent rewards are necessary for the whole thing not to become overwhelming or too tiresome. And basically it works just like in the main game, but where the single player relies a lot more on story, here we have a lot more projects to make. There is some story and some cutscenes, but they are far less numerous. So yeah, you mostly run around gathering resources, crafting and building, but it's not like those are the only activities you can do. You can also fight, you can visit dungeon-type locations or pick up bounties and hunt monsters. I should warn you though that as far as I was able to establish, the difficulty is scaled for exactly 4 people. Either that or I'm really bad at this. So if there's only, say, 2 of you, you might want to wait until you're a couple of levels higher than it's recommended, or have a lot of healing items on hand, but healing medicine is unavailable, at least in the beginning. You basically rely on food, and food is not very effective. Interesting thing about bounties though is that if you fail, they don't reset, so you can stop anytime you like, come back later and slowly chip away at them until you finally kill all the enemies and the boss. Maybe they do reset after a while, but I never waited long enough to test this. Anyway, the fighting. The fighting itself is not perfect. The enemies desync a bit. However, the worst thing is that after executing a combo, which kinda happens automatically if you just frantically mash the left mouse button, your character will put away their weapon, and for a fraction of a second they won't do what we expect them to, which is quite confusing. And this is when you become vulnerable and can get seriously hurt or even die if there's not enough people in your party to keep the enemies busy. And you cannot do anything about it. We are confused only for a second, but sometimes it's enough. Fortunately, dying is not very problematic, but that stutter in combat can be annoying, especially if you don't play with 4 people. Now, I realize that blaming the game while not playing it the way it's meant to be played is unfair. But honestly, I don't think the pauses in combat are there by design. Fortunately, it's beta, so things can and will change. Hopefully, this as well. So, you can fight monsters together, you can visit hazardous ruins together, you can do co-op commissions that become available once you build a co-op commission board, and you can construct parts of Sandrock together. You can also grow crops, and you're taught the ways of straw grid planting by none other than Myrtle herself. Also, be on the lookout for quests. They will appear on your map in the form of purple and yellow circles with an exclamation mark, and you will see arrows on your minimap, just like in single player. Of course, work is not the only thing you and your team are allowed to do. You can also play critters and take photos. You can't spar, which is kind of a shame, but when I really think about it, I don't believe I'd do a lot of it even if it were possible anyway. You will spend a fair amount of time working and doing all the grindy stuff, but the way you organize all those activities is completely up to you and your group. As I already mentioned, multiplayer here is not, like in many other games, just a single-player campaign but with more people. It is its own thing. However, it works best if you've already played the main game. You will still do just fine if you haven't, but the whole thing won't mean as much. I was quite excited to see Howlett, or Myrtle in the flesh, so to speak, but that's because I know who they are. We can instantly see the difference in the state of Sandrock and the Oasis, and see exactly where things are going. On the one hand, we are happy every time we build another familiar structure, and it's quite nice to be able to freely chop down cacti and trees, but on the other, we know we are part of something just as destructive as it is creative, and we know some of the faces we see almost every day will be long gone by the time a certain builder from Highwind meets Mian and moves into Mason's old house. Mason himself will become grumpy and bitter to eventually leave. The Oasis will change, the pretty little pond by Mort's shack will dry up and become a cemetery. Of course, it's not all doom and gloom, even if you tend to overthink like I do. It's still wholesome and light-hearted, but subtle undertones are always there, if you care to look. And if you do, you kinda get kicked right in the feels. And that's what I meant by saying let that sink in a little earlier in the video. Sandrock has layers, both in single and multiplayer mode, and actually, that's why I like this game so much. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I see you in the next video. Take care.